Some love stories do not end. They simply go underground, buried in old photographs and handwritten letters tucked into biscuit tins at the back of wardrobes, waiting with extraordinary patience for someone brave enough to dig them up. This is one of those stories. It begins with a death and a tin, and a photograph of two young people in Seoul who looked at each other the way people look at each other when they think nobody is watching. Her name was Grace. His name was Shin Hyun-woo. And the story of what happened between them, what Grace chose, and what it cost her, and what it set in motion 30 years later, belongs to their daughter now. Her name is Sola, and she is about to find out everything. Switzerland in November was the kind of beautiful that demanded to be felt rather than photographed, the Alps distant and snow-capped beyond the city. The air carrying that particular clean sharpness that Sola Iamide had spent 4 years learning to love and had, somewhere along the way, actually succeeded in loving. Zurich suited her. Its precision, its quietness, its absolute commitment to doing things properly, these were qualities she recognized in herself, had recognized since childhood, and which her mother had always laughingly called her Swiss soul long before Sola had ever set foot in the country. She was 28 years old, a structural architect at one of the city's most respected firms, with a small but exquisitely organized apartment in Whippingen and a reputation among her colleagues for the kind of focused intelligence that made projects run on time and under budget. She had sleek black bob hair that fell precisely to her jaw, never a strand out of place, and a small gold nose ring in her left nostril that was the one concession she made to something wilder than her professional exterior suggested, a quiet signal, for those paying attention, that Sola Iamide was not entirely the composed, controlled person she presented to the world. She had taken 2 weeks off work to go back to Lagos when her mother fell ill. She had taken another 2 when Grace died. The illness had been swift, which was both a mercy and a cruelty, swift enough that Sola had made it in time for the last coherent conversations, the ones that mattered, but also swift enough that there had been no gradual preparation, no slow acceptance. 1 month Grace Iamide was calling her daughter every Sunday evening to ask whether she was eating properly and whether the Swiss cold was getting into her bones and whether she had met anyone nice recently, and the next month she was gone. And the apartment she had lived in for 30 years was full of her things and her smell and the particular silence of a space that has not yet understood that its person is not coming back. Sola had been in Lagos for 11 days, organizing things with the quiet efficiency that grief sometimes produces in people who do not know any other way to cope, when she found the tin. It was at the back of the wardrobe in her mother's bedroom, behind a stack of folded encre fabric and a box of old documents, house papers, insurance certificates, the physical evidence of a life carefully administered. The tin itself was an old Jacob's cream crackers biscuit tin, the kind that had been repurposed across 1 million Nigerian homes into containers for everything from buttons to savings to secrets. This one was sealed with a rubber band that had been there long enough to have left a faint impression in the tin surface. Sola sat on her mother's bedroom floor, in the dusty afternoon light, and opened it. The photograph was on top. Black and white, or rather, the particular faded color of a photograph that had once been vivid and had mellowed over decades into something softer and more melancholy. 2 young people stood in front of what appeared to be a university building, the signage in Korean characters behind them. The woman was Grace, unmistakably Grace, her mother's face at perhaps 25, rounder and less lined than Sola had ever known it, laughing at something just off camera. Beside her stood a young Korean man, tall, lean, with the kind of face that was not conventionally handsome so much as deeply interesting, the face of someone who noticed everything and said less than he observed. He was not looking at the camera. He was looking at Grace. He was looking at her the way Sola had read about in novels and quietly doubted in real life, with the full, unguarded attention of a person who has found the thing they were looking for and cannot quite believe their luck. Sola turned the photograph over. On the back, in her mother's handwriting, the small, careful script she had known all her life, Shin Hyun-woo. Seoul, 1995. The love I had to leave behind. She sat with the photograph for a long time. Then she opened the bundle of letters. There were 23 letters. All handwritten, all in Korean, a language Sola did not speak, but each one had a date, and the handwriting was the same throughout, precise and slightly formal. The handwriting of a man who had been taught to write carefully and had never entirely abandoned the habit. The dates ran from 1993 to 1997. The last one was dated 3 months after Grace would have returned to Nigeria. Then there was the diary. A small notebook with a green cloth cover, Grace's name written inside in her own hand. Sola opened it with the particular care of someone handling something that was never meant to be read by other eyes, and felt, briefly, the guilt of it, the intrusion of it, before the first line dissolved the hesitation completely. Her mother had written, "I have decided to write this down because I think if I don't, the weight of it will crack something in me that won't mend. His name is Shin Hyun-woo, and I love him, and I have no idea what to do about that." Sola read the diary from beginning to end without stopping. She read about the scholarship, Grace's extraordinary academic scholarship to Seoul National University in 1993, the first in her family to study abroad, the pressure of being the one who got out and the responsibility that came with that. She read about the university library, 3rd floor, Tuesday afternoons, where Grace had developed the habit of studying because it was the quietest corner of a building full of noise. She read about the Korean medical student who came to the same corner every Tuesday and who, for 3 weeks, said nothing to her at all, only nodded when their eyes met, until one afternoon he sat down across from her and said, in extremely careful English, "I have been trying to think of a reason to speak to you for 3 weeks. I haven't found one. I'm speaking to you anyway." She read about 2 years of love, a love conducted in the spaces between his medical studies and her architecture courses, in the particular intimacy of 2 people building a shared language from 2 different ones, in long walks through a city that belonged to neither of them, which made it, paradoxically, belong to both. She read about his family, the weight of their disapproval, the specific Korean conservatism of a family with a son in medical school and a future already mapped, a suitable Korean bride already identified, a dynasty of expectations that had no room in it for a Nigerian girl, however brilliant, however loved. She read about Grace's decision. The calculation of a woman with nothing behind her and everything ahead, no family money, no safety net, a scholarship that required her to return home, a future that depended entirely on her own 2 hands. The decision to end it. To go home. To not tell him about the pregnancy that she discovered 8 weeks after she landed in Lagos. The diary's last entry was brief. It said, "I have decided not to tell him. I have decided this for his sake and mine and for reasons I understand completely and will probably spend the rest of my life second-guessing. His name will be in everything she is, she will have his eyes or his hands or his way of being quiet, and I will know him in her always. That will have to be enough." Sola closed the diary. She sat in the dusty afternoon light of her mother's bedroom for a very long time. Then she took out her phone and began, with the focused precision that had always been her greatest professional asset, to search for a man named Shin Hyun-woo. Finding him was, as it turned out, both easier and more complicated than Sola had anticipated. Easier because Shin Hyun-woo had become, in the 3 decades since he and Grace parted in Seoul, an exceptionally prominent cardiothoracic surgeon, one of the most respected in South Korea. His name attached to several major medical breakthroughs in minimally invasive cardiac surgery, his face occasionally visible in Korean medical journals and, less frequently, in newspaper profiles of distinguished physicians. There was a Wikipedia page. There was a hospital profile with a formal photograph, a man of 58, silver at his temples, the interesting face of the university photograph now settled into something that age had made more authoritative rather than less. The same quiet eyes. The same quality of paying attention. Complicated because a man of that prominence and that profession did not simply receive unexpected contact from strangers claiming connections to his past without significant filtering. His hospital's administrative email would almost certainly route such a message into obscurity. His personal contact information was, appropriately, not publicly available. Sola spent 2 days back in Zurich. She had returned after the Lagos arrangements were complete, needing the familiarity of her own space to think, turning the problem over with the systematic patience she applied to structural challenges at work. Every building had a way in if you understood its architecture. Every closed door had a logic. In the end, she did the thing that her instincts had been telling her to do from the beginning, which was also the most frightening thing. She was direct. She wrote him a letter. A physical letter, handwritten, on good paper. She wrote it 4 times before she was satisfied with it, not because she was uncertain of what she wanted to say, but because the saying of it required a precision that went beyond her usual professional confidence. She was, after all, writing to tell a man she had never met that her recently deceased mother had kept his photograph for 30 years, and that she was, in all likelihood, his daughter. The final version said, simply and completely, "My name is Sola Iamide. I am a structural architect based in Zurich, Switzerland, and I am Nigerian. My mother's name was Grace Iamide, née Okafor. She died last month. In clearing her belongings, I found a photograph of her with you, taken in Seoul in 1995, with your name on the back. I also found her diary from that period, and 23 letters in Korean, which I believe are yours. I do not know what I am asking for, exactly. I think I am asking for the truth. I am enclosing a copy of the photograph. You will recognize it or you won't." She sent it to his hospital's administrative address, marked clearly for his personal attention, with the copy of the photograph enclosed. Then she waited. She did not expect a reply within a week. She received one in 4 days. It was not from Shin Hyun-woo. The message came to her email. She had included her contact details in the letter at 7:15 on a Tuesday morning, Zurich time, while she was still in bed with her coffee. The sender's name was Shin Jae-won. The message was 3 sentences. "My father received your letter yesterday. He asked me to contact you. Are you available to speak?" She stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back, "Yes." "When?" His reply was immediate, "Now, if you're willing." The video call connected 40 seconds later. The man on the screen was 29. She would learn this later, with his father's bone structure translated into something sharper and more angular by youth, braided hair pulled back from his face, and a single tattoo visible at the side of his neck. Dark ink against warm skin. He had the same quality his father had in photographs, the quality of paying careful attention. He was looking at her with an expression she could not entirely read, assessing, cautious, not unfriendly but not yet warm. "Miss Iamide," he said. His English was precise and slightly formal, the English of someone educated in it rather than raised in it. "Sola," she said. "Please." A brief pause. "Sola." He said her name carefully, testing the shape of it. "My father asked me to speak with you first. I want to be honest with you about why." "Please be," she said. "He has been," Jae-won said, choosing his words with the visible care of a man who understands that some words cannot be unsaid, sitting in his office since yesterday afternoon, unable to do very much of anything. He hasn't seen that photograph in 30 years. He didn't know it still existed. A pause. "He didn't know you existed." Sola set her coffee cup down carefully. "He didn't know my mother was pregnant when she left?" "He didn't know," Jae-won confirmed. "He found out yesterday from your letter, along with everything else." He paused again. "I'm speaking to you first because he asked me to, and because I want to understand your intentions before he puts himself in a position of vulnerability with someone he doesn't know." "Your intentions," Sola repeated. "You mean whether I'm after something?" "I mean exactly that," he said, without apology. He is a prominent man. This is the kind of contact that prominent men receive from people with various motivations. I don't know which kind of contact this is yet. Sola looked at him steadily through the screen. She appreciated, despite herself, the directness of it. She understood protective instincts, had spent her whole life with only herself and her mother, had developed her own version of this same watchfulness. "I'm an architect," she said. "I earn my own money. I live in Zurich. I am not interested in your father's prominence or his finances. My mother kept his photograph for 30 years and wrote about him in a diary she never showed anyone, and I think she would have wanted him to know that she kept it. That's the whole of it." She paused. "If that's not enough to arrange a meeting, I understand. I'll go back to Switzerland and leave you both in peace." Jaewon was quiet for a moment. He was looking at her with that careful attention, reading something in her face that she couldn't track. "You have her eyes," he said finally. Then, as if surprised by his own words, "I saw a photograph of her. In the copy you sent. You have her eyes exactly." "People have always told me that," Sola said quietly. Another silence. Then, "When can you come to Seoul?" She flew out on a Thursday. Zurich to Seoul, 13 hours with a connection in Frankfurt, long enough that she arrived at Incheon Airport in the early afternoon of a Friday feeling simultaneously exhausted and acutely, uncomfortably alert, the way she always felt at the beginning of something significant. Seoul received her with October at its finest, the air carrying that particular autumn sharpness, the city's hills visible in the distance beyond the airport's glass and steel, the organized busyness of a place that had long since made peace with being both ancient and relentlessly modern. Sola stood at the arrival's exit in her camel coat, her sleek black bob immaculate despite the hours of travel, her gold nose ring catching the afternoon light, and felt the specific disorientation of arriving somewhere that is entirely new to you, but has nevertheless been part of your story since before you existed. Her mother had walked through an airport like this 131 years ago, young and full of the terrifying excitement of a scholarship and a future, with no idea what was waiting for her in a university library on the 3rd floor. Sola had booked herself into a hotel in Mapogu, not the expensive tourist district, something quieter, more residential, the kind of neighborhood where people actually lived. She had learned, over years of traveling for architecture projects, that you understood a city better from its residential streets than from its hotel corridors. Jaewon had arranged for her to meet his father on Saturday. That gave her one full day in Seoul alone, a day she used the way she used most things, methodically and with full attention. She walked. She walked for hours, through Mapo and across the Mapo Bridge over the Han River, watching the city move around her with the patient observation of someone trained to understand how spaces work, how people move through them, what a place reveals about itself in the relationship between its old and new. She found the neighborhood where Seoul National University stood and walked its perimeter without going in, thinking about a 23-year-old Grace arriving here with everything she owned and a scholarship and a determination that her daughter had apparently inherited precisely. She ate alone at a small restaurant where nobody spoke English, and she ordered by pointing and received something warm and unfamiliar and very good. She sat at a window table and watched the street and thought about her mother, and about the diary, and about the way Grace had written his name, Shin Hyunwoo, every single time, never shortened, never abbreviated, as though the full weight of it needed to be carried each time it appeared. She thought about Jaewon's voice on the video call. The carefulness of it. The protectiveness. She understood it, would have done the same for her mother, had done versions of it throughout her life, placing herself between Grace and things that might hurt her. The instinct was familiar even if its object was a stranger. She went back to her hotel and slept for 10 hours and woke feeling, for the first time since her mother died, something adjacent to ready. The restaurant Jaewon had chosen was in Yongsan, quiet, traditional in atmosphere, the kind of place that understood discretion without being asked for it. Sola arrived 7 minutes early, because she always arrived early, and was shown to a table at the back where the light was warm and the other tables were sufficiently distant. She saw Shin Hyunwoo before he saw her. He came in from the street with Jaewon slightly behind him, and Sola had a moment, a brief, unobserved moment, to see him as he was before he became aware of being seen. 58 years old, silver at his temples and in the close-cut hair above his ears, the interesting face of the university photograph settled now into the authority of a man who had spent decades being trusted with difficult things. He was still tall. He walked with the particular posture of a surgeon, straight-backed, economical, the posture of someone who has spent years at an operating table and learned to hold their body in a way that does not betray fatigue. He was looking around the restaurant for her. His face, in the searching, held an expression she had not expected, not the wariness she had anticipated, not the professional neutrality she might have braced for, but something that looked devastatingly like hope. Then he found her face. He stopped walking. Jaewon, half a step behind, stopped too. Father and son stood still in the entrance of the restaurant, and Solo watched Shin Hyunwoo look at her, really look at her, the way someone looks when they are trying to find something they are not sure is there, and she watched the moment he found it. He crossed the restaurant toward her. She stood. They looked at each other across the small distance of the table. "You have her eyes," he said. His English was careful and slightly accented and carried the unmistakable quality of a man choosing each word with full awareness of its weight. Exactly her eyes. And her. He stopped. Collected himself. "I apologize. I had prepared what I was going to say, and I find I cannot remember any of it." "That's all right," Sola said. Her own voice was steadier than she expected. "I didn't prepare anything at all. I thought it would be better to just be honest as we go." He sat down across from her. Jaewon took the chair at the end of the table, slightly to the side, present but not between them, the position of someone who has appointed himself a witness rather than a participant. "I read your letter many times," Hyunwoo said. "I want you to know that." "I rewrote it 4 times, Sola said. Something that might have been a smile moved across his face. "Your mother was like that. She was always precise about words. She said imprecise language was the beginning of imprecise thinking." Sola felt the words land somewhere tender. "She said exactly the same thing to me my whole life." They looked at each other across the table, a man and a young woman, connected by a photograph and 30 years of silence, and the particular bond of people who loved the same person without ever having been in the same room with her. "Tell me," Sola said quietly. "Tell me your side of it. I've read her diary. I know what she felt and what she chose. But I only have her perspective. I'd like yours." He told her. He talked for a long time. She listened the way she listened to complex structural briefs, completely, without interruption, tracking everything, filing it against what she already knew. He told her about Tuesday afternoons on the 3rd floor of the university library, and about 3 weeks of looking at a Nigerian woman with the most remarkable face he had ever seen, and not being able to think of a single reason to speak to her that didn't sound absurd, until he finally decided that the absurdity was preferable to the silence. He told her about 2 years of loving Grace Iamide with the specific intensity of someone who has never loved anything halfway, a quality, he said, that his son had apparently inherited, to the occasional exhaustion of everyone around him. At this, Jaewon said nothing, but something shifted in his expression that Solo noted without looking directly at him. He told her about his family, the particular weight of Korean familial expectation, the architecture of obligation that had been built around him since childhood, the impossibility, as a young man with everything still to build, of choosing the person he loved over the structure that would allow him to build it. He did not make excuses. He said, simply and clearly, "I was 25 years old, and I did not fight hard enough for her. I have known this for 30 years. There is no version of that truth that doesn't belong to me." He told her about the letters, 23 of them, sent to an address in Lagos that eventually stopped receiving his correspondence, returned unopened, or simply gone silent. He told her about hiring someone in 1998 to try to find her, how that search had located Grace Iamide in Lagos, working as a draftswoman, living with a young daughter, apparently building a life. He said, "I saw the word daughter and I assumed, she had moved on. I assumed the child was someone else's. I did not investigate further. I understood that she had made her choice and I tried to respect it. A long pause. I thought about her, he said, on a Tuesday every week for 30 years. Not every Tuesday in a way that was painful, mostly in a way that was just present. Like a room in a house that you don't go into very often, but you always know is there. Sola looked at him carefully. She kept your photograph in a biscuit tin at the back of her wardrobe, she said. For 30 years. She never mentioned you. She never explained. But she kept the photograph. Hyunwoo was quiet for a moment. Then he said, very low, I have the same photograph. The same one, taken the same afternoon. I keep it in my desk drawer. I've moved offices 4 times in 30 years. The photograph has moved with me every time. Sola felt the fullness of this settle in her chest, the particular weight of 2 people carrying the same thing for 30 years on opposite sides of the world, neither knowing the other was still holding it. She would have wanted you to know she kept it, Sola said. That's why I came. That's the whole of it. Shin Hyunwoo looked at his daughter. The word was still new and enormous, and he was still finding the edges of it, and said, thank you. For coming. For finding me. For being brave enough to write the letter. I'm an architect, Sola said, with the ghost of a smile that was entirely her mother's. I find the way into things. It's what I do. She had not expected to spend time with Jae-won after that first meeting. She had not expected, truth be told, to spend time with anyone in Seoul beyond the meetings necessary to accomplish what she had come to accomplish. She was a woman who planned her time carefully and had a flight back to Zurich booked for the following Wednesday, and between now and then she had her father's presence to navigate and the strange weight of a new identity to carry, the identity of a woman who was, against all expectation, no longer the daughter of one parent but 2. Jae-won appeared at her hotel the morning after the restaurant dinner. She was in the lobby, about to leave for a solo walk, when she saw him come through the entrance, braided hair, leather jacket, the neck tattoo visible above his collar. The same careful attentiveness in his face that she had noticed in the video call and then in person, and was beginning to think was simply the permanent condition of his expression. My father asked me to show you the city, he said. He had a surgery this morning he couldn't reschedule. He felt terrible about it. You don't have to, Sola said. I'm perfectly happy walking alone. I know, he said. I'm not here because you can't manage alone. I'm here because my father asked and because a brief pause, something shifting in his expression. Because I'd like to, if you don't mind. She considered him for a moment. The offer was genuine, she had learned, in years of professional negotiation, to distinguish genuine offers from obligatory ones, and this was the former. I was going to walk along the Cheonggyecheon, she said. And then I wanted to find a good architectural project to look at. Somewhere interesting. He almost smiled. I know exactly where to take you, he said. They walked for 4 hours. He took her to the Cheonggyecheon stream first, the restored urban waterway that ran through the city center, flanked by walking paths and small bridges. The kind of urban infrastructure project that Sola had studied from a distance and was now moving through with the particular pleasure of an architect encountering something she had only known in drawings. She asked questions, technical ones, about the restoration process, about the engineering decisions, and he answered from the genuine knowledge of someone who lived in the city and had paid attention to it, not from the surface knowledge of a tour guide. She noticed that he did not fill silences unnecessarily. This was, in her experience, a rare quality. Most people treated silence as a problem to be solved. Jae-won treated it as a space to be occupied comfortably or not at all, and the result was that their conversation had a natural rhythm, full when there was something to say, quiet when there wasn't, that she found, unexpectedly, restful. He took her to Dongdaemun Design Plaza in the afternoon, the extraordinary Zaha Hadid building, all curves and aluminium skin, the kind of architecture that divided opinion and demanded engagement. Sola stood in front of it and felt the specific joy she felt in the presence of something that had been thought about seriously, whatever you thought of the conclusions. What do you think? Jae-won asked. I think it's doing exactly what it's trying to do, she said, which is either a compliment or a criticism, depending on what you think it's trying to do. What do you think it's trying to do? Refuse to disappear into the city, she said. Insist on being noticed. Some buildings do that arrogantly. This one does it with conviction. There's a difference. He looked at the building and then at her. That's an interesting distinction. Structure is full of interesting distinctions, she said. That's why I like it. They ate dinner at a pojangmaka near Gwangjang Market, street food, standing at a counter, the kind of meal that required no ceremony and allowed for unguarded conversation. He told her about medical school, about choosing cardiothoracic surgery because of his father, and then discovering he had actually chosen it for himself, which were related but distinct motivations. She told him about architecture school in London, about the specific culture shock of moving from Lagos to London and then from London to Zurich, about the way Switzerland had initially struck her as cold in a way that went beyond climate and had then revealed itself, slowly and specifically, to be a place of profound and private warmth. He asked about her mother. She told him about Grace's wit, her stubbornness, her extraordinary capacity for making a home out of whatever space she was given, the Sunday phone calls, the specific way she had of asking, "Are you eating properly?" in a tone that communicated 17 other questions simultaneously. She talked about her mother the way she had not yet been able to with anyone else, the way you can sometimes only talk about a person with someone who has a stake in understanding them. She sounds extraordinary, Jae-won said. She was, Sola said. She was exactly that. They walked back to her hotel through the evening streets. At the entrance he stopped and said, "Tomorrow, if you're free, there's something my father would like to show you. Something that belongs to your mother. He found it when he got home last night." Sola looked at him. "What is it?" "He'd like to show you himself," Jae-won said. "If that's all right." "That's all right," she said. He nodded. Then, "Good night, Sola." She noticed, again, the way he said her name, with the same care he gave everything, the same full attention. "Good night," she said, and went inside. Shin Hyun-woo's home was in Songbukdong, a quiet, leafy neighborhood in the northern hills of Seoul where the streets were narrow and the houses had gardens and the city noise reduced itself to something distant and manageable. He had lived there for 20 years, he told Sola as he let her in, and it was the first home he had ever chosen entirely for himself rather than for its proximity to the hospital or its suitability for a family or any other practical consideration. He had chosen it because of the view from the study window, the trees on the hill behind the house, the way the light came through them in the mornings. The house was a man's house in the best sense, not a bachelor's carelessness, but a solitary person's precision, everything in its place, the rooms comfortable and properly used. Books everywhere. A kitchen that showed evidence of actual cooking. A study whose desk was covered in medical journals and annotated papers and, Sola noticed, a small framed photograph in the corner that she recognized even from across the room. He led her to the study. He sat behind the desk and she sat across from him, and Jae-won stood in the doorway the way he had stood at the table in the restaurant, present, watchful, not intrusive. Hyun-woo opened his desk drawer. He removed a small wooden box, the kind that might once have held stationery or stamps, and set it on the desk between them. "Grace sent me one letter," he said, after she left. "I had told her, before she went, that I would write to her at her family's address in Lagos. She wrote back once. One letter. In it she told me that she was well, that she had arrived safely, that she thought it would be better for both of us if we did not continue to correspond. She asked me not to write again." A pause. I ignored her request. "For 3 years," I wrote. Eventually the letters came back unopened. I stopped. He opened the box. Inside was a single envelope, old, its edges soft with age, her mother's name and a Lagos address written on the front in handwriting Sola, recognized from the diary. "Her letter to me," he said. "I have kept it for 31 years. He slid it across the desk toward her. "I think it belongs to you now," he said. Or rather, I think you should have the option of reading it if you want to. It's your mother's words. They're not mine to keep anymore. Sola looked at the envelope for a long moment. Then she picked it up carefully. The letter inside was 3 pages, Grace's small careful script, familiar and absolutely her, covering both sides of each page. Sola read it slowly, aware that Hyunwoo was watching her with the patience of a man who had learned, over decades of difficult conversations, not to rush the important moments. Her mother's letter said everything the diary had said and some things it hadn't, the specific texture of loving him, the particular difficulty of the decision. The way she had stood at the airport with her departure gate on the board and understood that walking through it was the beginning of a grief she would carry always, and that she was going to walk through it anyway, because loving someone did not always mean choosing them. And sometimes the most honest thing you could do for a love was let it be complete rather than let it be ruined. The last paragraph said, I want you to know that this was the best love of my life. Not because it was the most dramatic or the longest or the most convenient. It was none of those things, but because it was the most honest. You saw me entirely. I have never felt so seen. Whatever comes after this, and I hope everything good comes after this for you, please don't forget that for 2 years in Seoul we were exactly what we were supposed to be. That is more than most people get. I am grateful for every Tuesday. Sola folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, held it in both hands for a moment. She loved you, she said. It came out quieter than she intended. I know, he said. Just that. I know. They sat in the study in the quiet of Songbukdong, the 3 of them, father, daughter, and the son who stood in the doorway, holding the weight of 30 years of a love story that had ended and not ended, that had gone underground and surfaced now in the most unlikely way, alive in the face of a young woman with sleek black hair and a gold nose ring and her mother's eyes exactly. She extended her stay by 5 days. She told herself this was practical. She had more to discuss with her father, more of the city to understand, more of the strange new landscape of this relationship to navigate before she returned to the clean, familiar architecture of her Zurich life. These things were true. They were not, if she was being precise about it, the whole truth. She and Jae-won fell into a pattern without discussing it, mornings with his father, who had adjusted his hospital schedule to free his mornings. Afternoons that began with some agreed destination and tended to extend into evenings without either of them engineering it. He knew the city the way people know cities they grew up in, not as a map, but as a body of knowledge, intuitive and inexhaustible. He knew which streets changed character after 6 in the evening, which restaurants required reservation, and which required only the confidence to walk in and sit down. Which vantage points gave you soul in a way that made you understand something about it you hadn't understood from the ground. She was aware of him in the way she was aware of a structure she was assessing, the specific attention of someone cataloging, noting, building a picture. She noted the way he listened, with the focused patience of a doctor trained to catch what people were actually saying beneath what they said. She noted the way he moved through the city, not fast, not slow, with the particular ease of someone who had stopped trying to be somewhere else. She noted the neck tattoo, which she had not yet asked about, and the braided hair which she had not yet touched and was not going to think about touching. On the 4th evening, walking back from Bukshan Hanok village in the early dark, he said, "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask," she said. "I reserve the right not to answer." "Fair," he said. "What do you want this to be?" "With my father. In the long term." "What are you hoping for?" She walked in silence for a moment, considering it honestly. "I don't know exactly," she said. "I know I'm not hoping to replace anything. He has a life. I have a life. I'm not looking for a father in the way a child looks for a father. I'm 28. I'm past that particular need." A pause. "I think I'm hoping for honesty. A real relationship with an actual person, built the right way, without pretending that 30 years didn't happen or that we know each other when we don't. I think I'm hoping to know him." Jae-won was quiet for a moment. "That's a good answer," he said. "It's the true one," she said. "Those are often the same thing," he said. though not always. She glanced at him. Is there something you're not saying? A pause. Several things, he said. I'm a doctor. I'm accustomed to precision about what information is relevant to share and when. And you've decided the several things are not yet relevant? I've decided, he said carefully, that some of them need more time before I know whether they're relevant. Yes. She looked at him steadily. He looked back. The Seoul evening moved around them, people, traffic, the city's particular nighttime warmth, while they stood in it having the kind of conversation that sounds like one thing and is clearly another. All right, she said finally. More time then. Thank you, he said, and they walked on. Hyunwoo raised the subject himself on the fifth morning with the direct honesty Sola had come to recognize as his characteristic register. I would like, he said, over breakfast in his kitchen. She had been coming to the house in the mornings now, and he made coffee and she made the eggs, a division of labor that had established itself without discussion, to do a DNA test. Not because I doubt you. I want to be clear that I don't doubt you. Your mother's diary and the letters and your own face are more than sufficient. He paused. But I have a son. I have a practice and a reputation and a life that will be affected by what we build here. A DNA test it is for both our protections. It makes the truth official. It gives us something that cannot be disputed. I was going to suggest it myself, Sola said. I think it's the right thing to do. For the same reasons. He relaxed visibly, the almost imperceptible release of tension in a man who had been holding it. You agree. I'm an architect, she said. I always want the structural integrity confirmed before we proceed. He smiled at that, a full smile, which she was learning was rarer than the ghost of one and considerably more powerful. Your mother used to say something very similar about her drafting. She said a line that was almost right was worse than a line that was clearly wrong, because almost right looked good until it failed. She said that to me too, Sola said. Constantly. About everything. I only understood what she meant about the drafting part. I didn't know she was also talking about something else. They arranged the test that afternoon. A private medical clinic, Hyunwoo knew the director, as he seemed to know most people in Korean medicine, with results expected within 5 working days. Sola's flight was on Wednesday. She would be back in Zurich before the results came. We'll know by next Monday, Hyunwoo said. Does that feel too long? I've waited 28 years without knowing, Sola said. I can wait 1 more week. Her last evening in Seoul was a Tuesday. She noticed this only when she woke up that morning and checked the date, and then sat with the noticing for a long moment, the particular coincidence of it, or perhaps not a coincidence. The way certain things accumulate meaning through repetition until they become something more than accident. Tuesdays. 3rd floor of a university library. The love that started there and went underground and surfaced here, 30 years later, on a Tuesday. She spent the morning with her father at his house. He showed her photographs, his own, from the Seoul years, a young man with an interesting face and his whole future in front of him, and she showed him photographs on her phone of Grace in the years he had missed, the years of Sola's childhood and adolescence and early adulthood. He looked at each one with a physician's composed attention and the private devastation of a man being shown a life he might have been part of. She was happy, Sola told him. I want you to know that. She was genuinely happy. The choice cost her something, I know that now, I can see it in the diary, but she didn't spend her life in grief. She built something real and she was proud of it and she was loved and she loved back. A pause. She was whole. I want you to know that she was whole. Shin Hyunwoo looked at his daughter across the kitchen table of his house in Songbukdong and said, Thank you for bringing me that. It is a very significant gift. That evening, Jaewon walked with her back to her hotel for the last time. They walked slowly, in no particular hurry, through the Songbuk streets and down toward the busier roads where the taxis ran. At the hotel entrance he stopped. She stopped with him. I want to say something, he said, and I want to say it before you leave because I thought about it, and I decided that my father's example of not saying the thing is not an example I want to follow. Sola looked at him. The hotel entrance light was warm behind her. The Seoul evening moved around them. This week, Jaewon said, with the precision of a man who has been rehearsing and has decided to abandon the rehearsal, has not been what I expected. I expected to be protective and cautious, and I was those things, but I was also considerably more interested than I had planned to be. In you specifically. Not in the situation or the connection or the story in you. Your mind. The way you see things. The way you move through a city. The thing you said about the Zaha Hadid building. He paused. I'm aware this is complicated by everything. I'm aware that's an extraordinary understatement. It is, Sola said. We might be related. The DNA test will tell us that, he said. What I'm saying is that I wanted you to know before the test, before the results, before anything is official or confirmed or labeled, that if we are not related, I intend to say this again. Properly. With more time and less understatement. Sola looked at him for a long moment. She thought about her mother at the airport in 1995, choosing between the departure gate and the love she was leaving behind. She thought about 30 years of Tuesday mornings. She thought about the photograph in the biscuit tin. If we are not related, she said carefully, I think I would like to hear what you have to say. Something shifted in his face. Not a smile exactly, something more internal than that, something she was beginning to think was specific to him, this particular quality of a feeling that moved through him before his face entirely caught up. Safe journey, he said. Thank you, she said. For the city. It was my pleasure, he said, and meant it so completely that she believed him entirely. She went inside. She did not look back. She felt him standing there for a moment before she heard him turn and walk away, his footsteps on the pavement moving back toward the city. She pressed the elevator button and thought, please. Just please. She was in a site meeting in Zurich, a residential project in Hottingen, all glass and cantilevered concrete, the kind of thing she loved, when her phone lit up with a message from a Korean number she had saved as Shin Hyun-woo. The message said, the results have come. Can we speak this evening? She typed back, yes. 8 o'clock my time. She spent the remaining 4 hours of the site meeting being professionally excellent and personally quite somewhere else. At 8 o'clock, she sat at the desk in her Whippkingen apartment, the window behind her showing the Zurich evening, the limb at somewhere below in the dark, and opened the video call. Both of them were on screen. Her father and Jaewon, side by side, which told her something before either of them spoke, that they had agreed to tell her together, which meant they had already seen the results, which meant the results were something they had decided required the presence of both of them. Her stomach did something she chose not to examine too closely. Sola, her father said. The DNA results are confirmed. You are my biological daughter. There is no ambiguity. She exhaled. Good, she said. That's good. There is something else, Jaewon said. His voice was careful, carrying the professional neutrality of a doctor about to deliver a secondary finding. There was a discrepancy in the initial processing. A labeling issue with one of the secondary samples. The lab caught it in their quality check. Sola frowned. What does that mean? It means, Jaewon said, that the comparative sample used to assess familial relationship between you and me was incorrectly processed. The preliminary result that suggested he stopped. Started again. We are not half-siblings, Sola. The confirmed results make that clear. You are my father's daughter. I am my mother's son. Our parents were not. There is no shared biological connection between you and me. Silence. Sola sat at her desk in Zurich and understood, slowly and with the particular clarity of a structure becoming visible from a distance, what he was telling her. A preliminary result, she said carefully. There was a preliminary result that said something different. Yes, he said. When did you see that result? A pause. 4 days ago. Sola looked at Jaewon through the screen. He was looking back at her with the full, unguarded attention she had catalogued and been moved by all week, and in it now she could see something she had not seen there before. The specific look of a man who has been sitting with a very bad piece of news for 4 days and has been doing his best to hold still. You knew for 4 days, she said. Yes. And you didn't tell me. No, a breath. I wanted to be certain of the correct result before. I wanted to have the right information. Not the wrong information quickly. Sola thought about that. She thought about the kind of 4 days it must have been sitting on a result like that, uncertain, waiting for confirmation, knowing what the correction would mean either way. That was the right call, she said finally. Something moved across his face. I thought so. I wasn't entirely sure. Her father, who had been watching this exchange with the quiet attention of a man who understands that some conversations are not his to lead, said, "I'll give you to a moment." And his side of the screen went still. Sola and Jaewon looked at each other across the distance. So, she said. So, he said. You said, before I left Seoul, that if we were not related, you intended to say something again. Properly. I did say that. We're not related. We're not related, he confirmed. He said it very steadily, in the manner of a man establishing a fact on which he intends to build something. Then Sola said, I think you should come to Zurich. The thing that happened in his face then was the full version of the feeling she had been watching move through him all week. Yes, he said. I think I should. He came 3 weeks later. She met him at the airport. She had debated this, had told herself she would simply send him the address and let him find his own way, and had then driven to the airport anyway because it was the right thing to do, and she had decided to stop pretending she was not someone who did the right thing even when it was inconvenient. He came through arrivals with a single bag, the braided hair slightly different from how she remembered it, longer, newly done, the neck tattoo visible above his collar. And he saw her immediately and walked toward her with the same economical ease he had walked through Seoul, not rushing, not performing, simply moving toward the thing he was moving toward. You came to the airport, he said. You came to Seoul, she said. It seemed equivalent. They drove into Zurich in the early afternoon. She showed him the city the way he had shown her Seoul, not the tourist version, the lived version, the streets that mattered and the places that had accumulated meaning. She showed him the Limmat and the Lindenhügel and the view from the ETH terrace, where she had spent much of architecture school, looking out over the city and feeling the weight and privilege of being in it. He was a good visitor, genuinely curious, genuinely present, asking real questions about what he was seeing rather than performing appreciation. She noticed that he applied the same quality of attention to Zurich that he had brought to their conversations in Seoul, the attention of someone building a picture, cataloging, not hurrying to conclusions. On the second evening, she cooked jollof rice, the way her mother had taught her, the recipe that Grace had carried from Lagos to Seoul and back and into every kitchen she had ever occupied. Sola made it in the small kitchen of her Whipkingen apartment while Jaewon sat at the kitchen counter and watched with the focused interest of someone observing a procedure. This is what she taught you, he said. It was not a question. This is what she taught me, Sola confirmed. She said jollof rice was an argument, and she intended to win it every time. He laughed, not the controlled version, the real one, the laugh that started somewhere internal and made it to his face before he had decided whether to let it. It transformed him completely, that laugh, made the serious face suddenly open and warm and younger. She thought, I want to make him laugh like that as many times as possible. She thought it very calmly, the way she thought about things she had decided. They talked about everything and nothing, over jollof rice and a bottle of Swiss white wine, at the small table in her apartment with the Zurich evening outside the window. They talked about medicine and architecture, about Lagos and Seoul and Zurich, about the particular experience of carrying two cultures inside you and not fitting neatly into either. They talked about their parents, his mother, who had died 7 years ago and who he described with the precision of grief that has had time to settle into something livable, her mother, who had died 3 months ago and was still present in everything. My father loved her, Jaewon said. I want you to know that I believe that completely. Not as an easy thing to say, as something I observed in him, in the 30 years between her leaving and your arriving. The quality of his silence about her. The way he built his life, well and fully, but always with something held back. I think she was what was held back. My mother was the same, Sola said. She built well. She built fully. She was genuinely happy. And there was always something held back. They looked at each other across the table. We are, J1 said carefully, the children of two people who loved each other and did not fight for it. I have thought about that a great deal in the past weeks. What conclusion did you reach? That the courage they didn't have is available to us, he said. If we choose to use it. Sola looked at him steadily. The apartment was very quiet. Outside, Zurich did what Zurich did, went about its precise, considered business, indifferent to the particular significance of what was happening in a small kitchen in Whitkingen. You said, she reminded him, that you wanted to say something properly, with more time and less understatement. I remember saying that. We have time now, she said. And you have a gift for precision when you choose to use it. He reached across the table. His hand covered hers on the tablecloth, not taking, simply placing, the way you place something carefully. I am in love with the way you think, he said. I am in love with the way you walk through a city, and the way you look at buildings, and the way you talk about your mother, and the thing you said about almost right being worse than clearly wrong. I am aware that this is fast. I am aware that the situation is unusual. I am not, he said, afraid of either of those things. I am only afraid of doing what our parents did, which is to have the thing and not fight for it. Sola turned her hand over under his. Seoul to Zurich is approximately 11 hours, she said. I'm aware. Long distance is structurally complex, she said. I'm aware of that too. But not impossible, she said. If the foundation is right. He looked at her. Is the foundation right? She thought about the biscuit tin and the photograph and the Tuesday afternoons and the 30 years of carrying something underground until someone brave enough came along to dig it up. Yes, she said. I think the foundation is exactly right. What happens to people who find each other through the debris of a love story that ended before they existed? They build something new. Not from the debris, from what survived it. From the love that went underground and came up again and, in coming up, made space for a different love to grow. Sola flies to Seoul 4 times a year. She has a regular table at a pojangmaka in Mapo that the owner now reserves for her without being asked. She has learned 30 words of Korean, all of them practical, most of them related to food. She is working, in her professional capacity, on a preliminary consultation for a residential project in Yongsan, a connection that came through her father's network and which she accepted without embarrassment, because her mother had always said that a door being open did not obligate you to walk through it, but walking through it was not the same as having had it open for you. Her father meets her at the airport when she arrives in Seoul. They have dinner together every Friday when she is there. He cooks, she brings wine. They talk about medicine and architecture and grace with the particular honesty of two people who have decided that the truth is the only foundation worth building on. He is working on a paper about cardiac recovery outcomes that he has asked her to read for clarity of argument. She has sent him photographs of her most recent project at each stage of construction. They are learning each other with the patient, deliberate attention of people who know they have missed time and have decided not to rush the catching up. J1 has a standing open invitation to her apartment in Whitkingen. He uses it 6 times in the first year, flying out on long weekends, sometimes on shorter ones. On one occasion arriving on a Thursday evening with 48 hours before he needed to be back in Seoul, and treating those 48 hours with the focused intensity he brought to everything. He is learning Zurich the way he learned it the first time, in layers, adding new detail with each visit. He has a favorite cafe in Whitkingen now, and a preferred walking route along the Limmat, and the phone number of a Japanese restaurant in the old town that does not take reservations except for him, because Sola has been going there for 3 years and they know her. They are, between Seoul and Zurich and the 11 hours between them, something real and specific that does not require a label more precise than this. 2 people who chose the courage their parents didn't have and are building carefully on the foundation of it. On Sola's first visit to Seoul after the results, after Zurich, after everything, her father showed her the desk drawer. He had moved the photograph. Not removed it, moved it. It now sat in a small frame on the desk beside the window, in the light of the hill behind the house, beside a newer photograph, Sola and Hyunwoo at the restaurant in Yongsan on the first morning, taken by Jaewon on his phone without telling either of them. In it, Sola is looking at her father and her father is looking at her, and both of them are wearing the particular expression of people who have been given something they were not expecting and are not yet sure they deserve. "I have the same eyes as my mother," Sola said, looking at the photograph. "You do," Hyunwoo said. "You have her eyes exactly. And her precision. And her stubbornness, I suspect, though I haven't tested that sufficiently yet." "You haven't," Sola agreed. "Give it time." He smiled, the full smile, the rare one. "I intend to," he said. "I have a great deal of it." And outside the study window, the trees on the hill behind the house in Songbukdong moved in the morning light, the way they moved every morning, patient and unhurried, as though they too understood that the best things, the things worth having, the things worth building, the loves worth carrying across 30 years in a biscuit tin at the back of a wardrobe, simply required time and the courage to be found. The end. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy the story, don't forget to leave us a comment. Also like, share, and subscribe to our channel and click on the notification bell to get notified when a new